Good evening, Tony. An alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. It's good to be invited to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous, in my opinion. So I'm honored and I'm grateful to be here. This is a good group of Alcoholics Anonymous. For those of you who are new to this group, strap in and hang on. Sobriety's right on the ways. I can tell you from members of this group that I've known for many years, like Wallace and Steve and Tom and the others of this group that I've seen over the years. I've had the privilege to come here and share my experience, strength, and hope. Or just come and ride along is a lot more fun when you're riding with the speaker, and then you get to sit there and just listen. But I'm honored to be here, and I'm grateful for people like Wallace that takes Alcoholics Anonymous seriously and has a love and a respect for the integrity of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous as it's laid out in that big book. And Wallace and I share a lot of time behind the walls of Central Prison, carrying the message in there. And that's my service commitment, is as I'll do corrections work, and I carry the message into Central Prison every Wednesday night. And Wallace has certainly been in there many times with us, and we love to have him come in and tell his story and work with those guys back there. So I have a deep and respect and love and connection for this group. My home group is the Working with Others group in Angier, North Carolina. We meet at the Angier Baptist Church at 155 South Hickory Street in Angier, and we meet every Monday night from 7 to 8 o'clock. And our format rotates from week to week. The first Monday we do a tradition study corresponding to the month. So we did the 9th tradition. We do the 9th step the second Monday. The third Monday we do a big book study or literature study. The fourth Monday is an open speaker like this. And if we have a fifth Monday, which we've had quite a few this year, we've had several traditions. What we do is history discussion meetings about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. We find if we don't review our history and find out where we've come from and all the wonderful lessons that the founders were able to take that experience from the Washingtonians, the Oxford groups, and others, to not have to make those mistakes again. So I certainly don't want to recreate the wheel there. So we think it's important we study our history and learn from that and pass that on to others. My sobriety date is June the 13th, 1987. I'm extremely grateful for that. Our group is only 9 months old now. My past home group was the Willow Springs 12-step group. It meets in Fuquay, North Carolina. And I was a member of good standing there for over 20 years. And they kept asking me, I tell them I'm from Angier, and they said, well, why don't y'all have a group in Angier? And after about so many times of hearing that was a good enough question to say, why don't we have a group in Angier? And I said, well, it's quite simple. We haven't started one. And from that, I got tagged to start a group in my hometown, which I'm grateful for. It's been a lot of fun. I am the GSR for that group. So getting back active in service at the group level and how important that general service representative is in carrying the message from the district, the information to and from that group, that lifeline for service between our groups and our districts and our areas is absolutely vital for Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, it's not this big aura of what we don't understand or don't know. It's actually what allows a group like this to function really well and to function not only at this level but the district and at the area. I'm asked to tell you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. I can tell you is that I'm the kind of guy that I grew up rather small in eastern North Carolina. I was a little red-headed boy. I looked a lot like Jody on Family Affair, if y'all remember that sitcom. And I resented it. I wanted to have any color hair than red and anything other than freckles. And I got picked on a lot, so you learn how to fight real quick. And I would get on and off the bus in a tussle most of the time with the other boys in the neighborhood. So we were getting our workout, I guess. But I remember that's just that feeling awkward, you know, and just feeling kind of out of place sometimes. And you hear a lot of speakers talk about that, and that wasn't really what attracted me to this program. You know, I got over that and got along with everybody in the neighborhood. We had a small neighborhood in the town I grew up was a little paper mill town down east, and my grandfather had moved a couple of the machines from the Cherry River paper mill in Richmond, West Virginia, down to Plymouth, North Carolina, back in the 40s when they started that mill up. And was an integral part of creating the neighborhood that I grew up in. And they actually called it Little Richwood because all the people had relocated there to build this new paper mill in Plymouth. And so I grew up in a blue-collar family in that great little neighborhood. I had aunts and uncles on the corners, and we lived with my grandmother. And I had a really good time with all my cousins around the neighborhood. And I think about that now. My daughter's 13, and she's never been really much out of my sight a whole lot. And I remember all we had to do was be back for lunch or be back for dinner or be back before it got dark. And don't leave the neighborhood. And we were gone. I mean, Thursday night, they'd go outside and play. We're gone. And I wouldn't do that today with my kids for nothing in the world. It's terrible the world's got this bad. But that's how I grew up. You know, I just had a lot of freedom. But I was a kid with an overactive imagination, and I loved to tell stories, and they weren't always true. I had a good imagination. I could keep you entertained. That got me in trouble a couple of times. But what I remember about the thing that attracted me to alcohol, Dr. Silkworth talks about that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. He got me right there. I'm good. Sign me up. I was 7 years old when I took my first drink of alcohol. I was at my uncle's house. We were watching football on a Sunday afternoon on a black and white TV with a screen too small to even talk about, with the rabbit ears and aluminum foil on them, and my aunt was in the kitchen popping popcorn in a pot on the stove. There was no microwaves, no bag popcorn, that kind of stuff. So the whole house was filled with the smell of popcorn. And they would take a Pepsi in a jelly glass. Now, jelly glasses back in the days used to buy jelly and jams and glasses, and if you collected them all, you'd have a whole set of glasses. And like I said, we were a blue-collar family, so we made do with what you get. So they had a jelly glass and a Pepsi bottle, and they'd pour half of the Pepsi in the glass, and then my cousin and I, who was nicknamed Buckshot, you can imagine how tough he was, he and I would fight over who was going to get that bottle and who was going to have to drink out of that sissy glass, you know, because neither one of us wanted that glass. We both wanted the bottle. Somebody get smart and just take another empty bottle and pour half of it in there. It seemed a lot of trouble, you know. But we were fighting and wrestling over who was going to get the bottle, and my uncle came in and sat down with this beautiful red, white, and blue can, had salt on the top of it. It was sweating. And he took a big old sip of it, and he went, and he set it down, and that Pepsi no longer looked attractive to me. I was immediately attracted to whatever it was he was drinking that seemed so refreshing. So we started asking him if he'd give us a sip, and we finally beat him in submission, and he grabbed the back of my cousin's neck, and he got the can just to touch his lips good, and he pulled it away. And I said, well, I'm not going to get caught up in that trap. So the minute that beer came out, I just snatched it out of his hand, and I got as much as I could hold. It was like a hamster. I packed it in everywhere I could get it. It was about to run out my nose. And I took a big old swallow of that beer, and it went down, and it was crisp, and it was clean, and it was refreshing, and it was everything I knew it was going to be when I heard him go, ah. I knew exactly what he meant when I got that first swallow down, and I went, ah. I knew exactly right then. No more Pepsi for me. I want that red, white, and blue can, that PBR. And, you know, I talked to a lot of people in AA. They didn't have that experience first time they drank a Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. That was not what they thought was crisp, clean, and refreshing. Was not the adjectives they used to describe that. Most of them couldn't keep it down. It kind of came back up. But as you can see, that's kind of how my drinking career started. I really liked the taste of beer. Now, of course, I didn't drink alcoholically from that moment on, but I will confess from here that I drank enthusiastically from that moment on, is that if you left a beer unattended, it was fair game. If you sent me to the store or to the cooler to get you a beer and we were camping, or the refrigerator if we were at home, and I could get it open without breaking the tab off, because back in them days you had a ring and you had to pull it and then you had to pull all the way back, and I could get that first part, but that other just wouldn't work, and they'd be mad at me because there'd be all kinds of beers in the cooler where the rings broke off. But if I get it open, I was going to get me some before you got it. We called it paying the beer tax. You had to pay that for us to go get it, but you can see that the drinking started out for me in a lot of fun. There's a lot of excitement, that forbidden fruit thing. And boy, if it had just stayed that way, y'all would have another speaker tonight. But it didn't stay that way. I remember the first time I was able to drink without parental domination, without anybody controlling how much I was going to drink. And I can tell you is that I'm the kind of guy that just never thought about, you know, just, well, we're going to drink one or two, we're going to stop. You know, it just never crossed my mind. The goal was to get drunk. That was always my goal. I didn't ever go out just to get a buzz. I went out to get drunk. And that started, I don't know, I guess it's just DNA, but we went out this weekend and we were camping out, and we had no parents, and we were catching fish, and we were cooking those fish on the creek bank, and we were sharing them with the older guys that came down with their pickup trucks with their coolers full of beer. The good beer, Falstaff, Country Club, you know, Schlitz, Malt Liquor, Bull, all that good beer. And we were trading fish for beer. And I don't know how many of what I drank, but it was too many. All I remember was I was having a real good time, and the next thing I know, I came to in that tent wet, cold, and mad. I came to a lot drinking my drinking career, wet, cold, and mad, for various reasons. But that morning I come to, and I got in a fight with everybody in the tent because I just knew they threw me in that creek. And the story began to come out, and the more it came out, the less I wanted them to talk because they were telling me how much big a fool I made out of myself. I had jumped in the fire at one time. I had tried to pick a fight with 2 or 3 of them grown men. I had jumped in the creek, swam out to the no-wake buoy and yacked it around a little bit, and then swam back up and went back to the fire again. And then they finally talked me into going to the tent, and I went in there and passed out. And I thought, I just don't believe that side. I like my style better. Y'all threw me in the creek, and I went to the tent to warm up or something. But I had to take it because I had like 4 or 5 different people telling me the same thing. When I investigated the next day, it was the same story. So there must have been some truth to it. So I went off with a bang the first time I was able to drink the way I wanted to drink without anybody telling me to stop, But the funny thing was, at a young age like that, being a small fellow, I don't ever remember in my drinking that something came to my mind and said, Tony, you might want to stop with the next beer. You might want to not drink like you did last night. Maybe you want to cut back on your drinking. I don't ever remember them thoughts coming to my mind once I took a drink. Now, I would think that maybe I don't want to drink tonight. Maybe I want to recuperate so I can have a big time on Friday night, But I don't ever remember having that thought. People talk about they battle with themselves. I don't ever remember battling. Once I took a drink, I'm exactly like the doctor's opinion describes is that I had no control whatever about the amount I drank. And that's just the way I went. I went full bore or not at all. And that kind of drinking quickly got me into trouble. I remember I was out one night and a bunch of my friends, I had an old 68 Ford Falcon. It was an old car, man. That thing, I loved it. It was 4-door, 3-speed on the column. It had rubber in the floorboard like a pickup truck. Didn't have carpet. And bench seats front and back. And, man, we could pile the guys and gals in there. And it was an old party mobile. And I remember we were out one night, and it was maybe I'd had my license about maybe a month now, so probably about February, I guess. We were out February, early March, and we were out drinking and having a big time. And we pulled up by the grocery store for my buddy to go in and get some cigarettes. When you go out to party with your friends, you have to contribute to the pool, right? So you got gas money, you stole some beer from your mom and dad, some cigarettes or something. So we were running low on smokes. He had to go refuel us. So he was going in to get a pack of cigarettes. So we're sitting there talking with the girls in the car next to us and planning this big old thing we're going to do down at the river. And back it starts to snow. And we got all excited, man. Look at that snow. It's snowing pretty. It never snowed down east. But as a nor'easter blew off the ocean, so it was just snowing beautiful. We were so excited. We were having a good time. We couldn't wait for this guy to get out of the grocery store. So he comes piling in there, running almost like he had robbed the place, jumped in the back seat of that old 68 Ford Falcon and beating on the back of the seat, drive. And we told the girls, we'll see you down at the river, and we took off. And I'm thinking, this ain't no getaway car, it's more like a tractor pull than a getaway car. And I'm going through the gears, and we get on down the road, and he's got this big old green army jacket on. And I didn't know the things had so many pockets in them. And he starts pulling out bottles of wine. And I didn't know he had that many. And he just kept pulling out bottles of wine. And it was all the good screw cap wine that money could buy. You had the Richards Wild Irish Rose. We had Mug and David 2020. We had Thunderbird. We had Cool Filter Kings, Look Milds, Marlboro Reds. We were heyday. We had hit the jackpot. And we went out drinking all that wine. We already drank a few beers, just a few. And I know I had 2 tall Millers I'd swiped from my stepdad. And I don't know how many the other boy had got, but we had run out of beer and not cigarettes, so we were refueling. So we refueled, and I don't know what we started, the Richards or Mo, but I remember it was purple because I saw what had come out the other way. It was purple. But I was feeling pretty good by the time we were going down, and the snow was coming down good. It covered the roads, and we were all having a good time. The boys in the back seat were loud, and the boys in the front seat were loud, and I was just trying to focus on because my wipers on an old car run off a vacuum, so when you speed up, they slow down. When you slow down, they speed up, and so I'm trying to get the right speed to keep the snow off the windshield, and there's enough play in the steering wheel, you literally could about turn it a half a turn before the car would move, and I'm all of 30 days of experience driving on the road, and I'm going through there, and I got to going, and next thing I know, man, I'm going to change gears, and I had my cigarette tucked in my finger being cool, and it hit the dashboard and went in the floorboard of the car. And I could see it down there. I could see that red ember down there, and I'm looking and like, well, I'm seeing it rolling. I said, well, I'll get it to roll over. I'll just go down there and get my cigarette, So I'm watching, nothing's coming, and I turn the wheel over there and I see it go over, so I go down to get my cigarette, and when I come up, there's a car come out of nowhere. It must have landed on the road or something. Headlights come up, and we pulled over into this lane. He went down in the ditch. We busted out laughing. That's so funny. That guy went in the ditch, snow flying everywhere. He pulled that car out of the ditch and cut the blue light on. The excitement was on. Let's just say, I can tell you what happened for me was this is one of the first of many times that alcohol began to turn on me. And what I mean was it was a whole lot of fun putting it in, but it was about to be real bad coming out. And I had what I call a phenomenon. It ain't a phenomenon of craving, it's a phenomenon, is that I began to sweat profusely. My tongue began to swell. I couldn't hardly breathe, and I felt like I was going to throw up at any second. Now, all that happened in the blink of an eye. I was doing perfectly fine just a minute ago till he got that blue light on. He got that blue light on. It was just like, whoop, this is a big change. So I get so tore up, I pull my car in the ditch on my side of the road. So he pulls in behind me, and I'm trying to get the door, and the door goes open and closed. When you're sitting on a hill like that, the door just kind of closes on its own. And I'm drunk at this point. And that tongue swollen, and I'm sweating, and he walks up to the car, and he's got this, back in the old days, they had revolvers with a cylinder looked that big around, and a radio about that tall with a big old whip antenna on it and handcuffs. Looked like Batman's utility belt. They had that big old belt on and that hat, and he come walking up there, and I opened that door, and I could see them patent leather shoes you could about see yourself in, them starched, creased pants, and he just looked so sharp, and I opened that door, and I thought, Lord, if I throw up on them shoes, he'll beat me to death with that big blackjack or shoot me with that gun. I got to get out of here. And if you don't know it, they don't like for you to get out of the car at all. And after about the several times of me trying to catch my breath to ask him to let me out of the car, he begins to shine his light so he can see my face now. He's thinking that boy needs to get out of the car. So he lets me out of the car, and I go over behind this bush, and I start taking care of business. And he's promptly getting all these boys out of my car, and he's got them all standing over there. And I'm over here just trying to get composed, and I look over there, and he's got all them boys up there just looking up at him, and they're just scared to death. And I'm just, I'm going to die. Tonight is my last night on earth. My dad's going to kill me. I'm going to jail. He's not going to bail me out. I'm going to die right here tonight. License gone, 16 years old. It's just life as I know it is over is what I'm thinking. And he's just going on, and I'm thinking, well, I'll just stay here a little while longer. And finally he'll give me the come on over here thing. And I got that a lot when I got sober. I don't know about y'all, when I was drinking, I got that a lot. But I walked over there, and he scared me to death for what seemed like an eternity. Probably won't more than a couple of minutes. And then he comes up with the greatest thing I'd ever heard. He says, Mr. Dotson, he grabbed a buddy of mine. He said, this young man has not been drinking tonight. He is the only one in this car that's not been drinking tonight. And we were all looking at one another and said, how do you not drink, man? Why would you not drink? That was the best question. Why would you not drink? But anyway, I was grateful because he come up with this plan. He said, if you're okay, you give your keys to this young man. He's going to drive all y'all home tonight. And if I don't see that car on the road again tonight, we're not going to have a problem. If I see that car on the road again, I'm taking all y'all to jail. So you best believe we took that sweet deal. I'd have gave him that car if I didn't have to go to jail because my dad would have killed me. So we got out of that one. Now, I wish the other ones had went that smooth, but that's the benefit of being in a hometown because the officer knew me, my grandparents, everybody. My mother worked at A&P. That used to be a grocery store chain, by the way, A&P Tea Company. She retired 20-some years there. But everybody in this small town knew everybody. That's the only reason that went my way. When I tried that later on when I was 21 in that same town, it didn't work out that way. I pulled in behind the Golden Skillet up there on 64 one night trying to evade a ticket and went in the bathroom. And I happened to work there when I was going to high school, so I thought it was safe. Went in the bathroom, stayed in there a while, and I thought I'd let him blow off, and then I would come out. I finally gave it enough time, smoked enough cigarettes. I come out of the bathroom, and he's still sitting out there in his car right beside my car. So that night it didn't go very well. I got my first drunk driving ticket that night. And there was many to come after that. But I can tell you is that the drunk driving tickets and all the other things are not what define me as an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic because once I started to drink, I had no control whatever of the amount I took. And as it says on page 44 that, we couldn't seem to stop entirely. I don't ever think I remember wanting to stop drinking. I know I want to take a break for a while and get caught up, but I didn't ever want to stop drinking. And what happened for me was those kind of things. I managed to graduate high school by God's grace, and I think the teachers just tired of me. But I got out of high school, and I don't know about y'all, when I was young, I wanted to get away from home. I was 18 years old. I did not want to live at home any longer. I wanted to get out and see the world. My parents tried to get me to stay home and go to community college where I could drive back and forth. There was one in Williamson over in Martin County, there was one over in Beaufort County. No, I wanted to go to Pitt County in Greenville, North Carolina, ECU, college town. The girls outnumber the guys 7-1. That's where I want to go. That's a party town, bar on every corner. That's me. That's where I'm going. And so that's what I made my plan, and I made it happen. And that first drunk driving ticket was a result of me coming home to show them how we drink in Greenville now. That worked out real good, didn't it? But what happened for me was I quickly drank my way in and out of Greenville. I had absolutely nobody helping me be responsible. I was like a spring out of the box. And so were all my buddies at that time in the 80s, early 80s when we were in Greenville. And I remember one night, it started on a Saturday, and this is one of these things I'll share, and we'll get on through this. But a couple events that happened that I look back on today that were monumental in me being able to fully concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. And this was one of them. It was a Saturday. It was football Saturday at ECU, big game. Everybody was going. And we had started drinking at our little trailer we had there in Shady Knolls Trailer Park there in Greenville. And us boys were renting the trailers. All us kids that were going to Pitt Community College, we were in the trailers. All the ECU kids were in dorms. So we were in these trailers and we were partying, having a big time, but we didn't have much money, so we went to the grocery store. And back in those days, they sold generic beer. It was just a white can with blue letters that said beer. That's all it said. And it was like $1 and something a 6-pack. So we went in there and stocked up. We filled the whole refrigerator, took all the food out, filled the refrigerator completely full with beer, and we meticulously turned all the cans, so if you got one out, the one behind it said beer. So it read beer all the way through. And we tore into drinking beer. And we drank, I don't know, in the morning or something like that. But, you're not supposed to drink alone. But had they stayed, I wouldn't be drinking alone. But they left, and I was alone. So, yeah, I was drinking alone. I drank alone for about an hour, and that wasn't no fun, so I'm going downtown. So I take off to downtown Greenville. And I get down there in a little foosball place. I like to play foosball, Pantana Bob's. And I get down there, and I get in on the foosball table. And back in those days, you put a quarter up. If you win, they buy you a beer, and somebody challenges and tries to till you lose, and then you got to buy them a beer. And I don't know how much I had won. I had a whole little mantle on the wall there, and I had full of long neck Budweiser empties there. I had been drinking and winning for a while now, and loud and obnoxious, and I know they wanted me to lose as bad as I wanted to lose, but I finally got drunk enough to lose, and I go outside because I'm starting to get hot in there. And here comes that feeling again. I begin to get hot. I begin to sweat. The tongue swells. The throat closes up. I got to get some air, so I'm going outside. And next thing I know, I come to, and I'm kind of cold. And I'm thinking, this ain't good. And I'm really cold. And as I come to, I'm looking, and there's this little Christian couple. Now, let me define that. There was a young couple, a young boy and a young girl, and they were clean cut, and they smelled good, and their eyes were clear, and they were very nice and polite, and were very concerned about my welfare, far more than I was. And they had been watching me for the entire time that I was in this blackout behind that alley. I was passed out back there. And I don't know how I got there. I just went outside to cool off. But I can remember when I came to and I saw them, how much shame and guilt and remorse that I felt that they found me in that condition. Fortunately, my pants were on, but I had no shirt, no shoes. All my other stuff was strode around that alley. People had been helping themselves too. And I came to and started collecting my stuff. And they began to tell me about how they got there. And they said, we never come through here. God told us to come through here. We don't know then, but we know why now. We were just before calling an ambulance because you were unresponsive. We could not get your attention, couldn't wake you up, couldn't shake you up. So we're grateful that you came to. Now I'm going to tell you, if you want to talk about terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair, those 4 horsemen, I was familiar with them right there that night for the first time, and unfortunately many other times after that. But that was the first time that drinking really turned on me. I mean, really, really got me to that point to where, because you see, when they first saw me and I moved, it was like they were watching a wild, wounded animal on the side of the road or something. They kind of took a step back, not knowing how I was going to come forward, whether I was going to be violent or what I was going to do. And I can just remember how god-awful I felt because of that. I had to get away from there as quick as possible, and I had to drink all the next day to push that memory as far back in my mind, hoping that thing would never see the light of day again. And the next time something like that happened was many years later. I was living in Raleigh. I had moved to Raleigh, and I had gone over to a party there in our apartment complex, and it had spilled out all into the breezeway, and I went in there. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe some outside issues to help me stay up and drink more. I don't know. I just know I was going to this big old party, and the next thing I know, I come to, and I was cold again, and the lights were a lot brighter than these. And I mean, I don't know if I was dead in purgatory or somewhere in the holding place, but I came to, and it was so bright and so cold in there. And I'm on a bed, and there's a sheet on me. I'm buck naked. And I'm like, what is this coming to? Naked stuff. I've got to get me some clothes. And I look over there in the chair, and my clothes are in the chair, and there's a whole puddle of water. And I thought, well, that can't be good. And I'm sitting there, and I'm, why is my throat hurt? Why does my head hurt? Why do I feel like death warmed over? And about that time, a little nurse popped in. And she said, oh, you're back with us? And I said, well, great. I said, honey, can you tell me what time it is? She said, it's almost midnight. I went to that party about 4 o'clock that afternoon. I have no idea what time that the event happened, but as the ambulance driver began to tell her, and she began to tell me, that at some point in time in that party, I got hot like I did, and I went outside to cool off, and I was found in a storm drain with a jacket that was being sucked down, and the water's rising up, and if they hadn't found me when they did, I'd probably have a different speaker tonight. I was in a blackout. I have no idea what happened. It's all hearsay evidence for me, because I couldn't tell you what happened to this day. I know when I went in, but I don't know when I came out. But they began to tell me why my throat was so sore. They had to pump my stomach out, and I had a lot of outside issues and paraphernalia and stuff in my pockets. And they told me that the Raleigh police officer confiscated those, and he wanted to talk to me as soon as I was conscious enough to talk, and I didn't want no part of that conversation. So as soon as she left the room, I put them cold, wet clothes on, and I left the hospital quickly, hoping never to see that place again. And I can tell you is that you know, you would think something like that would help somebody to stop drinking, but unfortunately it was quite some time later. What finally stopped my train was I was able to marry a girl from my hometown, and we were starting a life together, and she had come and talked to me because I got caught lying so much about my drinking and where I was at. And she said, you know, I don't really mind you drinking so much. I just wish you wouldn't lie to me about where you are and what you're doing all the time. Can you just do that? And I'm like, yeah, we can do that, you know. So I got to talking to some buddy of mine in my apartment, my roommates there, and some buddies from work. And we get in there, we're going to come up with this idea about how to stop lying. So what she didn't know is that I was working with some experts, and they informed me that you can go over there to Wake County Mental Health Center. They don't charge much if you don't make much. So I didn't make much. They couldn't charge me much. So I was going to go get help for lying. So I go and I fill out all the paperwork. Yeah, that's what I said. I fill out all the paperwork. I think when I go in there, it's going to be like something like Jack Nicholson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you know, wire windows and all that stuff. And I get there and everybody looked pretty normal to me. I thought I was in the wrong place. And the little lady come out and was real nice, and I explained to her what I wanted. And she said, okay. So she got me a questionnaire, and I'm sitting there and I'm answering these questions. And there were questions that we have our own set of questions, but they were very similar to ours. But it says, you know, has your drinking caused you a problem at school? Has your drinking caused you a problem at home? Has your drinking caused you a problem at work? Were you drinking when you didn't really want to drink, but you find yourself drinking anyway? And on and on and on and on, all these questions. And I'm sitting there and I'm writing in the margin and I'm turning that thing around and I'm just filling out. But what I'm doing is that it's just check yes and check no, but I'm explaining why I check yes, you know, like we do. We explain everything, you know. So I went through all this. Finally, that little psychologist, she's just had enough of me doing all that. She's like, hold on, son, hold on. Come here, let me see that. And she says, wait a minute. She goes right on, takes me right on to the psychiatrist. I think it's like a promotion. By the way, that's not a good thing when they do that. I was proud, but now I know better. But so she takes me in to see the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, she's this little lady behind a big desk with all the degrees. And she's got this little beaded thing with her glasses, the half-reading glasses. And cute little thing sitting behind that desk. And she's so smart. She's telling me all about all what's going on. And she begins to look over those questions. And she begins to ask me questions about those questions. And I began to tell her about those questions. And I began to answer the questions the best I can remember, the same way that I wrote it down on paper. I'm in there to stop lying, but I'm lying to this lady is what I'm doing. And she says, well, how much do you drink? And I said, well, you know, a couple. Let me define a couple. I stopped and got 2 beers at a time on purpose everywhere I went. So if you ask me between point A and point B, how much have you had to drink? A couple. It was a couple between here and there, but it was like 12 couples, but it was a couple, right? Where it's going. So she's beginning to become amused with me. And she takes enough time with me to amuse herself, and then she's done with that. So now she's writing on a business card, and I think, hot dog, I'm in her private practice. I don't have to come back to this public mental health no more. My ego is finally just kicking in full bore, and I'm going to get into private practice now. I'm not going to have to come up here with all these crazy folks. And she's amused by me, but I don't know what I said to her, but I must have amused her well. So she's writing this down, and I thought, I'm in. And she reaches over that big desk. She takes them glasses off and hands me that business card. And I'm expecting it to see her name and everything that says Alcoholics Anonymous and a telephone number. Drug Action of Wake County and a telephone number. And I'm looking at her like, what's this got to do with not lying? You know, that's what I'm thinking. You know, she said, Mr. Dyson, you call those numbers. And after you've been sober for a year, you come back and see me, and we'll see if we can't help you with that dishonesty problem you got. She clearly told me I had a drinking problem. I had a dishonesty problem. I was so mad I went to my first meeting to prove her wrong. As I stand here tonight, we know who was right, and that resentment went away many years ago. But boy, she had me. She had me ring her, boy. And that was one of the things that was the pieces that began to put together the mosaic that tiled the path for me to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. Was what happened was a series of events, good luck and bad luck being to happen. And the final thing that closed the chapter for me was I started going to meetings, and I was going to the other 12-step fellowship, and I was too young and hip, slick, and cool for Alcoholics Anonymous. I know I need to be over here with these young kids. And so I'm over there, and we're bowling after meetings. We're going out to eat, and we're having a lot of fun in this fellowship. Love the fellowship over there. I had no steps, no sponsor, no solution, but I was having a good time. And I'd go home on the weekend and tell my now then fiance what a good time I was having at those meetings. I think this is going to work all right. And I ain't drinking, a couple of days, and ain't doing any of this other stuff in a couple of days. Things are going pretty good, And then one weekend I come home and I had heard something in the meetings, that I was going to have to postpone that wedding we had coming up because I couldn't make any major decisions in the first year of recovery. I couldn't do that. So I'll come home and say, hey, honey, we're going to put that wedding off about a year, because I can't make no major decisions in the first year of recovery. And she said, I don't think you need to go to them meetings anymore. I said, me neither, darling. And off I went. For about the next year and a half, I like to kill myself. And what finally put an anchor on me was I caught a charge of felony possession with intent to distribute. They did not like my materials management and my distribution practices. They didn't like the way I was doing things. They probably took my car, my money, and everything I had, and my boss didn't like that, so he took my company truck, so now I got nothing. And that was when the scorecard read 0 enough for me, and I went to trying to go back to recovery and get some recovery, and I still wasn't ready for AA. I was still over there in the other fellowship in the kindergarten, and I was over there doing what I was doing, and after about 30 days, when we got in a wreck sober, man, I was like, you can't get in a wreck sober. I tore up a bunch of cars. I won't even take the space to talk about here tonight, the cars that I just total lost cars and crawled out without a scratch. God is good. But man, we wrecked and sober, and it's somebody else's fault, and I was mad as fire. I don't know how many poor people's fault cars I hit, but that was mad as fire. My little wife got hurt, and I was coming home from work one day, and I was just full of resentment, anger, and discontent, and God, I couldn't get it past it. And I said, I'll just stop and get me a beer. And I stopped and got me a tall Budweiser. And I got one. I didn't get two. And I come home, and I'm walking in. My wife's on the couch. And she looks at me with that beer, and it looks like I'm holding a rattlesnake. And her eyes get real big. She gets real worried. And I'm pulling on that beer thinking, okay, I need to get me some of this and some of that. Back this truck up in the field, drop the tailgate. And we're going to earn that white chip. We're going to get a good party going on. And then she comes up with the smartest thing I'd ever heard, where she said, honey, why don't you just pour the rest of that beer out and go to a meeting tonight? And I was just like that V8 commercial, man. You could have knocked me over with a feather. So I went to the sink for the first time that I know of. I poured a perfectly good beer out that didn't have a cigarette butt floating in it. That was the only time I poured out beer, something was in the can. But I poured it out. I went to a meeting that Wednesday night. I could not pick up a white chip because I knew everybody was keeping count. No such thing was true, but I just felt like they were. So by Saturday night, the noose is closing in on me, and I went to a group appropriately named called Surrender to Win in Garner, North Carolina, and I met the man to become my first sponsor. And I walked in there, and when they said, has anybody, had a problem staying away from a drink or drug today? And my hand flew right up. I don't know how it went up. It's been God. My hand flew right up, and the story began to unfold. And I told him I drank on Wednesday, but I was struggling, and I was trying to stay sober, and nothing was going right, and yada, yada, yada. You know how we are. And the man at the end of the table shared something with me, and he said, just hold on, son. He said, I'll talk to you right after the meeting. And right after the meeting, he came up to me, and he asked me a couple of simple questions. He said, best I can remember, he asked me if I was ready, if I was really, really ready to quit drinking. And was I willing to do anything to make that happen? Something along those lines. And I don't know if anybody ever asked me that question before, and all I remember was saying yes. And he says, do you know what a sponsor is? And I said, not really. And he said, let me tell you. And he says, do you have a sponsor? I said, no, definitely not. He said, you do now. And he said, here's what we're going to do. And he started to take me. The first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was his home group that Tuesday night. And he took me over to his home group. And that became my home group in Alcoholics Anonymous. And those people in that group took me in. Now I looked probably like Redbeard the Pirate by this time. I had a full red beard, long hair, hat. People would slide their pocketbooks over closer to them if I sat next to you. I mean, that's kind of how I looked when I got here. I didn't look like somebody you'd want to go out in a dark alley with, because I had to look that way to go to the places to get what I needed to survive. But those folks in that group, I mean, I was the youngest guy in the group. I was 25 years old, and I got lots of attention in those days in the 80s when I got sober. And those folks just loved me to death. And I couldn't ask for a better fertile soil for my seed of recovery to be planted. And I remember my sponsor one night. He was one of them sponsors to tell me what I need to hear and not what I want to hear. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't tell me none of that good stuff. He told me exactly the way it was, and I could either do it or not. And I remember the first big book, I'll share this with you. The first big book I bought came out of resentment. I'm sitting in the meeting. The meeting's been a good meeting too. Everybody was sharing some good stuff. And I was just thinking about what a good meeting it was. I didn't get up in the middle of my normal intermission. I'd leave the meeting in the middle of the meeting, go smoke a cigarette, and then come back. You know, isn't that what you're supposed to do, right? No, that's not what you're supposed to do. So a sponsor is a good thing to have, because my sponsor, when I come back, he said, we don't have intermissions in AA. You can stay here a whole hour. You can smoke a cigarette before, smoke 4 or 5 before, but don't get up and leave the room. Go to the bathroom before, get your coffee before. You get ready. So when the meeting starts, you keep you up in the chair, you know. And I'm mad at him, thinking, what do you think you are? You know, I deal with him outside, you know. And then all of a sudden the basket's going around, and he says, put $5 in there. $5 in there. $5. People put $5 in there. He said, put $5 in there and get your big book off the table on the way out the door. I don't need no big book. And he dropped his head like he did. He said, put $5 in the hat and pick the book up on the outside the door. I thought, I'll pick that book up all right. And I put that $5 in there and went around. I was primed. The rest of that meeting, I was no good. I couldn't wait to get him outside and straighten him out. And then he does something that was classic for him. And Henry looks at me and he says, Tony, he said, you know, boy, he said, you'll spend $100 on something to kill yourself with, and you won't spend $5 on a book that'll save your life. Don't forget your book on the way out the door, Tony. That's how my sponsor had to talk to me. So he had to get past all that ego and that pride and that shell I had up there. And he had to chip into that so that he could get me to hear the message of recovery. And those old timers loved me until I just, you know, I had one lady, her name's Marie Rich. She's passed away now. She had 20-some years of sobriety, just an icon of that group there in Raleigh, and loved her to death. But she was one of those folks that I would dart out the door at 9 o'clock. I mean, I just cut a trail out that door at 9 o'clock. And she was standing outside that door waiting on me one night. She reached out and grabbed me by the arm, and I pulled that lady down the hall, I know about 6 feet, before she finally got me stopped. And little bitty lady. And she got me stopped, and I'm just agitated, and I'm ready to go outside and smoke a cigarette. And she said, honey, how was your day? Asked me my days, you know, and she said, let's go outside and smoke a cigarette and talk about it. And I thought, that's my kind of gal right there. Now you got it, you know. But she knew how to talk with me, not at me, not to me, but with me. And we went outside, and as my day unfolded, she began to plant those seeds. Well, Tony, tomorrow night we're going to have a big book study. And we're doing the 12 steps right now at my apartment, starting in there. And we've kind of outgrew my apartment, so we're going to be over at this little church tomorrow night. I'd like to invite you to come join us tomorrow night. And I started going to that step study with these old timers sitting around the table with my sponsor and his sponsor, and on and on. And those people began to read and share their experience with those steps. And all I got to do is listen, but I'm grateful I listened, because they spoon-fed me the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. As I began to go to other meetings, and as I began to hear, and I began to work these steps with my sponsor, what became apparently clear to me is that this thing really worked, because I started watching. I was a watcher. I don't know about y'all, but I watched folks for a long time in AA, because I thought y'all was on the lam. I didn't think you was telling the truth. And I was watching these other guys, and they were getting better, and I want to know why I wasn't getting better when they were getting better. And they told me pretty quick, so, well, they're working the steps. Tony, you're around them, but you're not in them. We need you to get in the steps. And so my first sponsor started carrying me through the steps. And I remember I had about 90 days, about 3 months in the program now, which I thought was a miracle. And I came home from work one day, and I was restless, irritable, and discontent all over again. I had a hole in my chest, the wind blowing through the size of a street pipe, and just miserable. But everything in me, the worst obsession and compulsion to drink bourbon of all things, but bourbon. I could smell bourbon, I could taste bourbon. I wanted to drink a Jim Beam, George Dickel. I didn't care. Fighting cock, I didn't care. I just want some bourbon, that nasty stuff. And I wanted bourbon. And I remember at that time in AA, there used to be a saying, the time to call your sponsors before you drink, not after. It's okay to call them after, but it's a whole lot better if you call them before. So I'm like, okay, well, that works for me. So I'm pacing back and forth, and I'm in that trailer park now. I know where I need to go, and I know who's got what I need to get to feeling better, and I'm going to go get it. But I got to call my sponsor first. I know he ain't going to be home. He's never home. He's a young man. So I go ahead and pick up that phone, and I call him, and Joker picked up on the first ring, and I was like, man, it just ain't going to happen for me today. And he asked me what's going on. I began to tell him what's going on, and he said, can you come over to my house? I said, I can. He said, well, there's two convenience stores between my house and yours. Can you get past them without stopping? I said, yes, I think I can. He said, come on over to the house. So I get over to the house, and when I got over there, we got into his living room where I'd been many times. He would invite me over when he was 12-stepping somebody on his couch that was staying the weekend to get over a bad drunk, and he would sober him up on the couch over the weekend. And he would invite me over to talk with him and to learn from that experience. And now I'm the guy on the couch, and I'm sitting there, and we're talking, and he starts to do something that's not very fair, but it's effective. He took me back through all the misadventures and near-death experiences that I had in my drinking career, and he took every one of them and used them as a weapon against me to help me to fully concede to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. And then he got me even worse, he said, well, Tony, now that we know you're an alcoholic, we know that you're powerless over alcohol without a doubt. He said, where do you stand with God? And I dropped my head. I said, Henry, I believe in God. I just don't think he believes much in me. And then he dropped his head. And it was always bad when your sponsor drops your head. It's not a good thing. He dropped his head, and he almost come to tears. He said, Tony, I don't know how in the world you can think that. He said, let me use the same information we just used to convince you that you're an alcoholic. He said, now let me use the same thing and convince you that not only is God interested in you, but he's been watching out for you all along. That train wreck of your life that you just unfolded before us, look at how many times God was there to pull you out of a situation that clearly you would have died had he not been there. Had he not provided some sort of an intervention, you would have not survived to be here in front of me now. And he started talking about those things like the alley in Greenville and the storm drain in Raleigh and the total loss car wrecks that I come out without a scratch. And he used all those things as a weapon. And he says, Tony, I'll assure you one thing. God not only is interested in you, but obviously he must love you and love you a lot, or he wouldn't have been a part of your life as much as he's been a part of your life. Because obviously he's got a plan for you, or you wouldn't have survived all that. He said, I know a lot of people that hadn't survived near as much. He said, so if you'd have survived that, you've done really well. He said, so let's just go ahead and accept the fact that God is interested in you and he is interested in helping you. And then he took my hands, which I wasn't real comfortable with, but he said, you agreed in the beginning that you were willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol. Did you mean it or not? And I said, yes. And he said, take my hands. He said, we're going to pray. And he prayed. I listened. It was the third step prayer. Then I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was long. But I knew it was powerful. I knew it was very, very powerful. And he said it with such passion and power. And when I got up from there, I left that home that day with the instructions to start writing my fourth step. But when I left his home that day, the big book says at the bottom of the third step that if we pray this aloud without reservation, that's why we pray it on our knees, we pray it aloud without reservation, that sometimes an effect, a very great one, is felt at once. Now, I told you what I felt like going in there. Everything in me wanted to drink a liquor. The hair on my head, and I had a lot more of it back then, wanted to drink a liquor. When I left his house that day, the last thing I'll assure you I was thinking about was a drink of liquor. I had a sense of peace and ease that come over me that never come over me before or since. It came over me for a brief period of time, and I knew from that spiritual experience that some way, somehow, I'd never ever have to take another drink of liquor unless I chose to. It'd be my choice if I did. It'd be on me. It wouldn't be on God. And I knew that somehow, some way, I was going to be all right. No matter what kind of chaos and mess my life was in, it was completely unmanageable. But I knew those things, and I went home and I started writing that 4th step. And I remember that first 5th step that I took with him. And I've taken many more since then. But the freedom that came to me from that time, and the freedom that came to me from, and fast forward for you because I want to get in there what things are like today. So what things are like today for me. When I was 30 days sober, a company hired me. I got laid off my other job. I did lose that job at 30 days sober. The company that I work for today hired me with 30 days of sobriety. I was working for an engineering firm out of Greenville, South Carolina, and they were contract engineering at the plant, the manufacturing facility I work at today. And they hired me with 30 days of sobriety and gave me an opportunity. Because, see, I'd been working in there over the years in and out as an electrical contractor. And they gave me an opportunity. And my sponsor had me walk with my boss and tell him the truth about what I was doing and what I was trying to do with my life. I was going to AA and I was trying to be sober and how much time I had. And apologized for the time that I smoked pot and drank on his job and did other things I did on his job. And I did. And the man gave me my job anyway. And I've been working for that man now for 29 years. So I'm going to tell you is that when a sponsor tells you to do something, it's a good chance it's probably good advice. But I can also tell you is that hard work and determination also help do a lot of things for your career too. But what happened for me was in 2000, me and that first wife, we parted ways about 95. And in 97, my company had sent me back to school to take engineering courses and advanced stuff. And I was at Wake Tech doing that. And I met my now wife, Samantha, there. And we got married in 2000. And in 2000, it was really a busy time for us. And I was just so excited. A new wife. We got some new home. We're starting over. It's just going to be great. And you know, we get pregnant right away. And we're so excited because that's what we wanted to do. And everything's going great, but a couple of months into the pregnancy, there were some problems, and she ended up losing the baby. And I'm going to tell you, it was just like somebody had punched me in the stomach and just knocked the wind completely. It's like if you ever run football, and you run the football as a running back, and you hit a big guard or tackle, man, you stop dead, that ball kind of punches in, the air goes out. That's what I felt like. And it just knocked the wind completely out of me. And what happened for me is that I lost all consciousness with that power greater than myself. Because I thought, how in the world could God love me like everybody says he does and take my first child? How is that possible? And I got so caught up in that. My current sponsor, Jerry, he took me on to help me get through that. And we and him were buddies in our home group since 1994 when we joined that first home group. But what Jerry did for me was he took me back through that big book, one page at a time, and helped me to find a solution to that problem and helped me to have another spiritual experience at 13 years of sobriety without having to take a drink of alcohol. And helped me to cultivate a love and respect for the integrity of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and begin to use that in when I sponsor others and begin to transform my life and everybody else around me. And I'm forever grateful for what that man did for me and what he's given me the opportunity to do for others. And I appreciate everybody, and thanks for letting me share.